Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast brought to you by the Draft Professor. Taylor is back in the seat that belongs to him. It's been a couple of weeks, so Taylor, it's good to have you back. And we're going to dive into some safeties. But Taylor, what have you been up to the last 2 weeks?
I've been all over the place. Been traveling, been working. But yeah, excited to be back. Excited to get into some safeties.
And Steve, how would you describe the safety group that we're about to discuss overall? What's your executive summary?
Diversity, I think, is the key word from a positional standpoint. You know, whether they're hybrid, there may be, I'm going to save it until we wrap them up next week, but there's maybe one or two guys that not only in terms of a defensive back hybrid role, but guys that I could even see being converted to a linebacker potentially in the NFL. So definitely a diverse group, some real good names, fun times ahead.
Yeah, and to preface this podcast, so we have 3 safety podcasts. We had one last week where we covered 10. We've got this one where we cover 11. And there's going to be one more next week where we cover 10 more. So we're covering 31 safeties. And in an average year, between 17 and 20 get drafted. This is a good class, so we're going to be pushing that 20 number. But, you know, we will probably be talking about a couple guys today that do not have draftable grades. But if somebody's mentioning them as, hey, this safety is a my guy, we're going to cover them, but we're going to kind of sort through the, let's say, social media buzz and start putting grades on some of the safeties that you see everybody tweeting about. The first safety up is DQ Smith from South Carolina. 6'1", 219 is what I pulled off of PFF. But Taylor, what did you have on DQ Smith?
Yeah, so DQ Smith, I also have 6'1", 219. He actually was a quarterback in high school. I know Steve loves those guys. Freshman All-American in 2022 as well. So a little bit of his stats, 46 tackles so far this year. He has 1 interception, just a 9.1% missed tackle rate. He spends about 50% of his time down in the box. 40% of his snaps are deep as free safety. What I have on him is that he's pretty rangy. But in the couple games that I watched, he didn't get a lot of opportunities just because he was playing in more kind of that deep safety role, just kind of monitoring the field. Didn't get a lot of opportunities except for when he went against LSU's Trey'Dez Green, who is a 6'7" tight end, and DQ Smith really struggled in that matchup. He made a couple good plays on Green, but ultimately that's just a tough matchup for him. I think Trey'Dez Green's one of those tight ends we're going to be talking about a lot next year. He's pretty instinctive, but I think the one thing that really showed up on tape to me was he's a lot of palms to the sky pre-snap. Like it's not that he doesn't know what's going on. I think he just he's trying to take, and I read this in some local beat reporter's article, but he wants to take more of a leadership role in his senior season, which I totally understand. But sometimes I feel like he's a little bit unprepared for the snap because he's trying to get other people in position, or he's trying to communicate with the corners or the linebackers. So I think he spent a lot of time pre-snap, kind of being a little distracted. But I think that those are the main things on him. He's not very good in coverage. It's like 93% completion percentage when he's targeted. But he's good down in the box. I think he's going to be a decent special teamer. I think, he doesn't play a lot of special teams right now, and he played a little bit, doesn't have like a high grade or anything on his special team snaps, and I don't have any special teams films, so I can't really say that. But I do have a comp for him, and it's Andrew Sendejo, and I have him as around 6th grade. So I do think he'll sneak into the draft. I think he has, kind of that hybrid mold that Steve was talking about. He'll be able to play down in the box, free safety, nickel, wherever you need to put him, a special teams, a gunner, whatever. I think he's physical enough to make some of those different spots work. I don't think he's going to line up and, be a deep safety and just playing cover one. That's not his style. But, I like some things about DQ Smith. I think he still has some room for improvement. But size, speed, physicality, it's all there. Steve, what do you have?
Yeah, So, interestingly, you brought up the missed tackle rate. He's actually greatly improving. He had an 18.2% missed tackle rate in 2024. It was definitely a down year for him last year versus 2023. So he is bouncing back. I mean, he's got really, a good size and good frame. The arm length is good. The physicality. He does have good ball skills. He's a little grabby at times. You mentioned special teams. He actually blocked a punt for a touchdown as a freshman, but he is seen as a reliable tackler and coverage player on special teams. He had 10 tackles in the SEC matchup against Alabama, but yeah, and he had an interception. I think it was against Akron this year. But in terms of some of his best traits, I mentioned a couple of seconds ago, the physicality, playing in the SEC, his play recognition, his ability as a tackler, that hybrid skill set. The areas that I think where he can improve is his open space tackling, his consistency. You mentioned it. His coverage in deep range. The angles he takes. I think he's a great fit for the Gamecocks because, in the hybrid cover 3 schemes and the quarters, they're usually using them interchangeably as chess pieces. I also have around 6th grade on him. I don't have a comp for him, but physical player.
So do you guys think DQ Smith from South Carolina can play single high?
No.
I don't think that he should. I think he can. I don't think that he should. I think you see it a little bit with Steve talking about his down year last year. I actually looked this up just now because I was curious. Well, they had Nick Emanwuri last year, who played in the box primarily. So they had to move DQ Smith to a little bit more of a deep safety role. So actually last season, he spent the majority of his snaps at deep safety. So he's moved down back into the box more primarily this year. And even 2 years ago, he spent about a third of his time in the box versus deep versus in the slot. So he even has some slot capability too, which I think that versatility right there alone, along with the special teams skills that we talked about a little bit. I mean, I think it gets him drafted into, one of the, I think I tweeted about it before the season, but like those last 75, 80 picks in the NFL draft, are primarily special teamers. And I think that's where he fits. And I think he's going to be a rotational safety on the back end.
Yep. So I'm going to be a broken record. I'm going to be asking that question on probably every safety that we cover, right? Because there's more than one type of safety in football, right? Not all safeties can do all the things that the others do. But if a safety can play single high, you're probably going to see that they're going to grade a little bit higher. Right. And we'll get into that. I'm building to a message. So Wydett Williams from Ole Miss. So first of all, Wydett, you retweeted the podcast. I love you already. Right. So he retweeted the tweet that he was tagged in. Second, your teammate Pooh Paul retweeted the podcast when we covered him last year. So I love Ole Miss. I'm just saying we have to cover more Ole Miss football players. But Taylor, what do you think of Wydett Williams, the safety from Ole Miss?
Yeah, so Wydett Williams is interesting. He started his career at Delta State, transferred to UL Monroe, and then now is at Ole Miss, obviously. He has 30 tackles on the season, 47% completion percentage when targeted, so a little bit better in coverage than DQ Smith, not only from the numbers, but also what you can see on tape. He has 2 interceptions, 6 PBUs, a little bit higher missed tackle rate than DQ Smith. I don't think he's as strong of a tackler in that aspect. But again, he's primarily a deep safety. He's playing 60% of his snaps in the back end of the defense. And you can kind of see he's in the right spot a lot of the time. So the biggest issue for me with him, he takes a lot of bad angles to the ball. I've noticed downhill, he'll run straight downhill and then he'll realize the running back's cutting outside and then you'll see his route change to the outside to go try to cut off that angle. I'd like to see him take a more direct, line to the angle that the running back's going to, cut that off, take a couple yards off the gain. I think that's the biggest spot where he can improve. But he had an 82 grade on PFF for special teams last year at UL Monroe. So this is another guy that I think back end special teamer. Like, I think he's going to be, I have him as around 6 or 7 grade, not 6-7 like all the kids say nowadays. But my comp for him is Corey Lynch. Again, I think he has the size to play in the box, but again, he spends most of his time deep. So I think in the NFL, he could, become more of a hybrid role, but right now they're utilizing him more in the back end of their secondary and really not allowing him to get up to the line of scrimmage too much and have an impact in that area.
So Steve, what did you think?
Yeah. I love the SEC experience. Do want to focus, on more Ole Miss guys, again, size and frame. He's long, he's athletic, he's got deep field range. Taylor brought up the ULM to Ole Miss. He comes from Louisiana, Lake Providence, multi-positional athlete. He was a very high volume tackler at ULM before he moved on to Ole Miss. He's been healthy his whole career. Primarily in terms of his snaps have been at the free safety position. Without pulling out a calculator, I'd probably say it was 70% to 30, with 30% being in the box. There has been some slot usage. I think DQ Smith and some of the guys that we have yet to talk about today and ones we discussed last week have had some more slot usage. But, there is a balanced workload. 70-30. It's more like 60-40. But again, like Taylor said, his early career strength was in special teams, the size, the effort translating to high impact coverage. I do think that he can play that single high role on a consistent basis. It's not my call. I don't know, but more so than DQ Smith, I definitely see it. He's had some good games against LSU, good open field tackles. Again, his coverage awareness, positional intelligence, the adaptability is there. I would just like to see a little bit more physicality, in terms, especially when he's used in run support. That's what I've got on him.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm with you. I agree with almost all you said. And I just looked it up because I was interested and I just looked, but last year he actually spent more time in the box than he did anywhere else. And he did have a little bit, I think he had better success down in the box. This year they moved him. He's actually already played more snaps at deep free safety or deep safety than he did all of last year. So you can kind of see how they're changing the way they're utilizing him. I'd actually like to see him more down in the box a little bit more, like a more 50-50 split like it was last year, whereas this year it is like, 75-25. It's a big change. It's a big change, and I'd like to see him down in the box. But again, to Steve's point, like I do think he needs to be more physical. I've noticed that as a common theme amongst some safeties that we'll cover today. There's a lot of safeties that don't want to come downhill and hit. They'll just assume someone else is going to make the tackle, whether that's a linebacker or a slot corner or whatever. They don't really necessarily want to get involved until it's until it's too late. So I think that he could be a little bit more aggressive to the ball. And that's all I'll have to say about that. Hopefully the special teams will help, fix that.
Okay. Next up. Tao Johnson from Utah, 6'1", 200 pounds. Steve, what do you think of Tao Johnson's draft stock?
Yeah, good versatility. He's played wide receiver, corner, and safety at Utah. Good coverage grade of 85 last year. He's got range, very physical in run support, the ability to read and react on the football. He is relatively new to the defensive back role, and specifically he's only played one season at safety, but he's coming along well. He did have a 16% missed tackle rate in 2024, but, he's a developing player. I've got much earlier day 3 grade on him than I do with DQ or Wydett. He's a pretty good tackler. I think sometimes he needs to focus on wrapping up rather than, going for the big play. No injury history. He comes from Thunder Ridge High School in Idaho. Again, he started as a receiver. I think I have him down at 2 interceptions for the season. Taylor, you could check me on that. He's more, I would say, a 50-50, not exactly between playing the free safety role versus the box. He does have more snaps in the slot than Wydett, who we just discussed. He did have a blocked field goal that got returned for a touchdown. That was against Baylor last year. So he is a core special team contributor for the Utes. He's stacked up some good games against Arizona last year, against Baylor, against an INT against Texas Tech. I just think he's got good coverage range. He can be an explosive athlete. I think sometimes he tries to do too much, but I've got him at a reasonably early day 3. I think round 4 is a good spot for him. I haven't finalized my board, but he'll be within my, we'll just call it top 130. Chaw, what do you got?
Wow. I think you nailed it. I also have a round 4 grade on Tao Johnson. So that is fantastic. I love the way that Morgan Scalley, their defensive coordinator, uses Tao Johnson. I think of all the players on this list, the coach that's helping their player the most get drafted is Morgan Scalley and Utah's defensive coordinator. I think Tao Johnson is utilized in a way that completely, has his skill set shine. He blitzes. He's down in the box more than he was last year. Like last year, he had 608 snaps at deep safety, only 94 in the box. He's already at about 50-50 split this year, about 175 each. So he's down in the box. He's moving around. They're blitzing him. They're using him deep. They're moving him around. Everything that they're doing is setting him up for success. And I think that's great as he's learning the position. Because to Steve's point, he's very, very new at safety, and you can see that sometimes. I think you really see it in the run game. I think he gets pretty washed out of the run game. Obviously, look, I wore my Arizona State sweatshirt. If you saw my post about Jordan Tyson just absolutely mauling Tao Johnson in the run game. And Jordan Tyson is a good receiver. I don't think he's a world beater when it comes to run blocking, but he sure looked like it against Tao Johnson. I think that's his biggest issue. But outside of that, I'm a big fan. I think that he is. I think he had a play where he was down in the box, play action. He kind of looked at play action, realized it was a deep pass, sprinted 20 yards back and made a PBU, and it was an awesome play. He kind of just glides around out there. I really want to see him test because I don't think he's fast, like at all. So I'm a little worried about that. I think that's really going to hurt his draft stock a little bit. But just from a tape and a production standpoint, I also have him as a round 4 grade. And I'm really excited about the projection of what he can be. Get him in an NFL scheme. Obviously, Utah's defensive coordinator is using him in a way that is allowing him to shine. If he can do that in the NFL and get into a system where he's being moved around and being able to use that athletic previous wide receiver skill set, I think the sky's the limit for him.
Okay, so 2 questions on Tao Johnson. So first, Taylor, do you think he has the athleticism to do single high, to be a safety in a single high look?
Yeah, I think he definitely needs to bulk up around the line. I would rather have him, I think he's better in the back end than he is up around the line of scrimmage. I think it's when he is blitzing from the back end, I think that's when he's at one of his strong points. But yeah, I think he can definitely learn and he can play deep safety. Obviously they're moving him around a little bit, not putting him in such a box like they did last year and said, oh, you're only playing deep, right? Like they're changing that and they're moving that around. I think teams will see that, but I think I think he has the ability to do it. Yeah, I do. Athleticism wise, I will be interested to see how he tests.
Okay. And Steve, do you see Tao Johnson as being an NFL starter within a season and a half of him being drafted?
Season and a half. Good question. I think he would be a special team starter right out of the gate. I'm going to go, if you said season, I would say maybe not. Season and a half, yes, I think so.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I was going, right? So sometime during his second season, he should be looking for a shot to start. If you're putting a fourth round grade on him, that would be what my expectation would be.
And when I look at the traits, not just the production, but the ability as well as the traits, I think it's a situation where it's, a job he earns rather than, somebody, went down and, moves up the depth chart. And in moments like this, I always think about, a book I read a number of years ago that talked about the draft styles of some of these famous GMs and the guys out in Seattle, like John Schneider, who came from that Ron Wolf, tree. They always looked at their board, basically saying, okay, well, we got this guy on an expiring contract. We got this guy, doing this. They're always looking to fill their board as replacements rather than adding to it. So asking me that question, I think Tao Johnson within a year and a half. So, he gets drafted, figure, sometime in the 27 season. Yeah, I do think he would be not only a contributor on special teams, but also in the back end of a defense.
Okay, so next player, Keon Sabb from Alabama. Steve, what did you see?
Yeah, so, certainly a lot of experience. He's been at Alabama now for 2 seasons, moving over from the Big Ten in Michigan. I've got him at 6'1", 208. Strong frame, verified athleticism. He's got range. He's got that NFL build. I've talked about, I think you and I, Jim, talked about it last week. I like these bigger guys that we're now seeing more and more in the defensive back position. Physical tackler, thick frame. He's got explosiveness. He's got the ability to blitz off the corner. He's got good instincts. Not a ton of production. Did have a 14% missed tackle rate last season, but his season was cut short because I think it was a broken foot that made him miss some time. His pursuit angles, I think it's a common theme we talk about. These are the traits that they have to develop, if and when they get in the league, of just adjusting to the pro game and working with their position coaches and the DCs on their angles. But, he is a junior, so there is another year. I do think he's going to come out, though. But, an interception. He's actually, Chaw, check me on my numbers, but I have him down at being almost identical between his usage in the box as well as in the slot. So he's primarily been used, I think, 65%, putting on my math hat, as a free safety. His breakout was 2 years ago in 23. He came from a full-time coverage role with the Wolverines. The drop was due, obviously, not only the injury last year, but the new school scheme change, more box versus slot issues, smaller sample size. He did play on Michigan special teams units. I don't have anything on him for special teams at Alabama, so y'all can check me on that. He's got a history of good games on him. A couple of plays that I made note go back, one to last year, a forced fumble versus Tennessee last year, a couple of, good games that he put together his last year in Michigan, versus Penn State. And there was one more. I'll think of it. Iowa. But again, coverage IQ, multi-scheme versatility, tackling consistency could be a little bit better. Doesn't have a lot of versatility. Chaw, what about you?
Yeah. Okay. So as Steve knows, and now Jim, you'll know, and the people will know, I'm building out like a scouting model. I've never done this before, but I'm building out a model that incorporates film, athleticism, upside, their grades and certain things weighted in certain ways, right? So all I can do right now is film, upside, and their production grade is what I'm calling it, based off of some of their numbers that we talk about from these different platforms. But of the guys we watched today, Keon Sabb has the highest film grade for any of the guys, tied with Jalen Huskey, who we'll get to in a little bit. But so he had the highest film grade for me. So what I see on film, incredible processing of the game. He understands the game. He is pre-snap telling everybody where to be, pointing. I think in zone coverage, he's honestly the best of this bunch at directing traffic. And what I mean by that is he knows when to take a player coming into his zone, and he knows the route combinations that the other team's running. So if he knows that they have two vertical routes, one pushing the sideline, I saw it multiple times where he would tell the corner in the middle of the play to stay with the guy going up the seam on this, or going up the sideline, while he takes the guy carrying the seam. So I loved what I saw from that. I think that, to me, he is one of my favorite players that we're going to talk about today. Against Tennessee, he was matched up against Chris Brazzell on the goal line multiple times, and he made some good plays in that area. Like I said, he is a wizard in zone coverage. Like, whenever he knows where to be, when to be there. Big fan of him in coverage. I think as a deep safety, he's really, really strong. And then I know Steve mentioned that he can blitz. I don't think they should blitz him ever. He can't get to the quarterback. He's not even close. Like, he can't get anywhere near the quarterback. Like, he will blitz off the edge, and he'll just be like, sometimes, like, he'll be unsure of whether to go full speed into the backfield, or he'll want to stop and try to bat the pass down. And almost every time, he's not close to getting the quarterback, and he's not close to getting the ball. So I actually am worried about him as a blitzer. I think that's where I would not utilize him at all. I would just primarily put him in the back end and move him around in the back end. But he's not the type of guy who's gonna have great success blitzing off the slot. I do appreciate that they try it. I just don't think that's his skill set, and I don't think that's where I personally would have him fit in. And again, he won a national championship at Michigan, and there were some good players on that defense. So I know he learned a ton about the game. And like last year, you see it in his numbers, whereas he's playing a more split role. He's playing a third of the time in the slot last year, a third of the time in the box, and a third of the time deep. Well, they have said, you know what? You had great success at Michigan in 2023 when you were just primarily playing deep safety, and Alabama has moved him back to that role, and he's been really, really good this year. So I'm a big fan of Keon Sabb. I think he's the third highest graded player I had that we talked about today. So I have him as a round 2 to 3 grade.
Nice. And Taylor, from listening to you, listening to your description, I think you're describing a player that could handle single high looks.
Yeah, I think so. And I think so. I think so at a rate, at least of the players we're talking about today, probably the best of of this bunch.
I agree.
And again, if somebody's tuning in, the athleticism of a safety to play single high looks, like a defensive coordinator, if they're trying to hide a safety, will play cover 2. Because then now the safety only has to have the athleticism to cover half the field. So if your defensive coordinator trusts one of the safeties, you can go single high and do some robber looks, or move the other safety to some other places in the formation, because you don't need to leave 2 of them back. So there's a reason that I'm asking, and obviously Steve and Taylor know I'm a Bills fan, so we're looking for a player that can handle single high. Okay, a new name that was added pretty late, Devin Neal from Virginia. I heard nothing on Devin Neal during summer scouting, but he was a name that was brought up in the draft professor chat. We added him to the podcast. Yeah, so Steve, tell us why you wanted him added.
Yeah, so I'll be honest, there's so much data and info that comes at us. I forget what triggered me to start looking at him. I guess it was about a month and a half, maybe 2 months ago. But, again, in terms of the size profiles that I like, 6 feet, you've got it on the screen for everybody, 214 pounds. He's a former corner that turned safety. He's got the size, the range, good IQ. He is a senior. He's gone from Baylor to Louisville to Virginia. So he's got the experience across, the P5. Comes from Frederick Douglass High School in Kentucky. He was a former 4-star recruit as a corner and just known for his instincts and his ball skills. He's been healthy. Not as many total snaps as some other guys we've been discussing, but, he grades out very well. NFL ready for special teams coverage units, that kind of enhances, especially given his experience at the corner position, his open field tackling and pursuit, making key coverage plays in some of the ACC matchups out there. He has been a consistent top defensive performer, for Virginia. Just for some career stats, I had him down for 2 interceptions at Baylor back in 22. He had 4 interceptions in 23 at Louisville. That was his breakout year. And then he's just showing his leadership and consistency now that he's in Virginia. Areas that I'd like to see get better, his consistency in the run support, his deep field tackling, his durability, although he has no injury history. Versatile in Virginia's system. What do? They rotate that too high. So I think he is a guy that can play, that single high for you in Buffalo and leave some other names to my JETS, Jets. But no, I think I've got like with the couple of the guys that we just talked about, I do have a draftable grade on him. I could see him being, a fringe round 4, round 5 guy. Chad, did you have a chance to take a look at him?
Yeah, I did actually. Devin Neal is actually my lowest graded player of all of the guys that we're going to talk about today. And a big reason for that, I think, just like kind of what showed up on tape to me. He had the lowest score of anybody in just the film grade. Again, he had this sequence in the NC State game, I'm going to talk about it because I think it's probably something that he learns from. And I think that it kind of goes to my point about I don't think he belongs in the back end. My comp for him is actually Keon Neal, who was drafted in the first round, which is funny that I don't have an undrafted grade on Devin Neal. But Keon Neal, not related, I don't think. About the same size, physical player. You can see the physicality from Devin Neal. The leadership is there, like Steve talked about. Like that is his best trait, is his leadership, his ability to rally guys. He's a 6th-year senior, though, so he's going to be pushing 24 when he enters the draft. So I think that puts him to the back end. I think maybe 7th round. I'm going to go UDFA. But against NC State, so get this, they're up 24-14, right, coming out of the half. They're on the 35. NC State's on the 35-yard line. Justin Jolie, who I'm sure people will talk about on the tight end podcast, absolutely cooks Devin Neal in one-on-one coverage, like 8 yards of separation. It was unbelievable how turned around Devin Neal got. Next play, he fills the wrong hole on a run, 15-yard touchdown run, 24-21. They have to punt. He misses a tackle on the first play of the next drive, 55-yard run. Puts them in the position to take the lead. So the game completely swung on 3 plays in that game against NC State. All 3 of them happened to be negative plays for Devin Neal. He did bounce back a little bit later. He took a drive or 2 off after that, if you can imagine why. And then he came back and he actually did make a nice PBU on a pass against Justin Jolie. So you like to see him bounce back. You like that because, safety, defensive back in the NFL, it's just a job. It's like quarterback. You got to bounce back. You got to get up to the next play, right? So I think he's a more physical player. I think he's physical around the line. That was his highest grade for me, was physicality. I think that he should play more in the box. It's funny because Keon Neal spent almost his whole college career as a deep safety, and then he was drafted in the first round. He eventually moved to linebacker. Like I could see that same or similar path from Devin Neal. And I think it's funny that they have the same last name. I'm just now clocking that, but yeah. So to me, that's my comp for him. And I think he's a similar style player. Like I would say if I had to pick right now, whether he would move to a linebacker or move to a deep safety full time, I'm leaning closer to a linebacker or like that type of like box safety.
Okay. Next player, Nick Anderson from Wake Forest. Again, this was a late add to the podcast because he was not on any summer scouting list. Steve, what did you see from Nick Anderson from Wake Forest?
Yeah, so I like the way you put that because I'm still trying to figure it out. There's been some, wows, and there have been some, okay, I can't figure it out. I don't have right now a draftable grade on him, but admittedly, I do need to watch more. You've got the size 5'11", 197, so the height is a little bit less than other guys we've talked about, but, proportionately it works. Multi-year starter, team leader. He has 44 games experience. He's played a good amount. I would say it's about 50-50 between box and free safety. He is used pretty consistently to a degree at the slot. Good production and consistency. And this is where I started questioning my eyes and where I know I have to back away from reading certain stats and certain data is that, he's got some outstanding grades. He's got an 88.4% defensive grade. His rushing defense is over an 83. His coverage grade is 87. So it tells me I'm looking at a balanced playmaker who's trusted near the line of scrimmage as well as in deep zones. He's been pretty aggressive and mostly reliable on special teams, gunner coverage. In terms of anything notable, his tackling consistency, yeah, and that's always good. He does appear when I watch film, and I look for, the vocalizing and the direction. So I do see some leadership traits, obviously, based on the snap breakdown, the alignment versatility, and the communication. His deep field range against what's becoming more the average NFL wide receiver is definitely an area that he needs improvement in. His shedding of blocks in traffic. I don't know that you teach speed, right? You either have it or you don't, but he does get used in single high. I just don't think he's a great fit for it. So, it works great for Wake Forest, the hybrid safety schemes that's very common that we see in these college programs. I think, if Mike Tomlin and the Steelers comes calling, he's an ideal guy for a defense like that. Of what Tomlin, and I forget the defensive coordinator's name. Right now, I don't have a draft grade on him, but it's not because that I don't like the player. I'm still trying to figure out where he would fit on the rest of my safety board, because I do think, and we'll certainly talk about it next week. We've got the top heavy, with one particular name, and then we fill it out, right? Days 2 and 3. So I don't yet know where Nick Anderson is going to fit for me, but there's traits, man,
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't get a chance to watch too much of his tape, but I do have a player comp for him based on what I think that he'll do in the NFL, based on what his stats are and kind of what I've seen of him a little bit. Which, if you've ever seen that clip of him getting ran over by Jackson Dart, go watch that. That's what Jim tweeted today. It was fantastic. Anyways, my comp for Nick Anderson is. Well, first off, I have an undrafted grade because I haven't finished my scout on him. But Cody Davis, if you remember him out of Texas Tech, played 164 games in the NFL, started just 5 of them. And I think that's kind of the path here for Nick Anderson, right? Like, I think he's very much someone who, what I have here, big motor guy. He's always flying to the ball. Which, again, I'm pretty sure of all the guys we're going to talk about today, he is leading all of them in tackles so far this season. So he is around the ball, which bodes well for special teams. Obviously, you want to see him put on a little more weight. You can't be getting ran over by Jackson Dart, at least not making a habit out of it, right? So that's one. But again, he doesn't miss many tackles. Obviously that was last season too. So he's obviously bulked up since last season. Jackson Dart's no longer playing college football. So, but no, I'll get more into his, specifics of his film and things like that. Later in the week, Steve had to help me out. I was missing some Wake Forest defensive film. So Steve had to send me a Google Drive. That was nice. But yeah, he's just not a big coverage guy either. He's allowing like 84% completion percentage when targeted. So it's just kind of one of those tough eval. I think if he can play special teams at a high level, I think he'll have a nice long career based on his motor, based on, his tackling success that you can see in college. But outside of that, not fit for the deep safety mold, not one of those guys, but could be a rotational guy, someone that bounces around from team to team over the course of the next 10, 12 years. And we're talking about him as a good special teamer.
Yep. That's the next Dean Marlowe or DeMar Hamlin. Okay.
By the way, I don't know that Jackson Dart should be running over anybody anymore. If he's going to have a productive NFL career for the G-men, but I think he needs to take it easy. Anyway.
Well, Jackson Dart's running game got his coach fired. Robert Spears-Jennings from Oklahoma. Taylor, what did you think of Robert Spears-Jennings?
Yeah, the number one thing that I thought about Robert Spears-Jennings is just not a cover guy, not someone who should be asked to play 50% of his snaps deep over the middle of the field, but he is. That's kind of how they're using him in that defense. He's someone that I would have liked to see get a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage. He is a really good tackler in the open field. I wouldn't, and like it's a hard thing with like interceptions because like you take the ball away, right? So it's obviously a net positive. Like you have to give them some credit, but his interception, it was just a ball that was way overthrown. He just happened to be in the right place at the right time and he caught it. So not a lot in the coverage area, but man, he is a physical player. I have him of all the safeties we're looking at today, he had the highest grade for physicality. And I just want to see him down near the line of scrimmage. I want to see him causing havoc, blitzing, moving around. He's a big, large body. Like he's really good when it comes to almost everything except for coverage. Like he really just struggles covering man to man, even in zone. The thing I noticed about him is he turns and he faces the receiver. So if he's in deep safety and there's someone coming into his zone or he's playing man to man, he will shift his focus from looking directly on the field, like playing like a safety role. He'll flip his hips like a quarter turn and be facing the guy he's guarding. So anything that's happening, to the other side of him, that just goes out the window. He is solely focused on, he flips his hips and he's tunnel vision on the guy that he's guarding. And I think he needs to come a long way in coverage for him to have any sort of role in the back end of an NFL secondary. But the physicality, straight up the physicality, the size, the punishment that he delivers, like he's going to be drafted. I think I have a draftable grade on him. I think Steve even has him higher than I do. But I have him as a round 4 or 5 guy, and my comp for him is Tavon Wilson. You remember who that is? A little bit older guy. I don't like to comp the current players. I don't think that's fair to the players that are playing. So, but yeah, Tavon Wilson, yeah. New England Patriots 2nd-round pick. I think Spears is early day 3.
Steve, where are you on Robert Spears-Jennings from Oklahoma?
Yeah, I'm right there with him in terms of round 4, round 5. So, I don't know. It depends how fast, things get read. I don't remember if I did it on camera or I did it backstage, but, just for the interest of repeating his name, I'll just call him RSJ. I think RSJ could make a good transition to the linebacker role. Taylor, you hit on everything, right? I love the size profile, very reliable tackler, great run defense grade. I mean, I think it was coming out of last season, he had one of the best in the country. He finishes violently. There's limited positional versatility, but there's still versatility. But, Taylor hit it on the head. Man coverage, zone. I don't love it. I don't love it. He's amazing in run support. Just the way he unleashes and, he's built for that role. I want to see him as part of the front seven more so than in the back half of the defense. He was a 4-star recruit, top 12 national safety, two-way standout. But yeah, the interception, he gets credit for that, but it was like, here you go. Better for me are the forced fumbles. He's got a couple of fumble recoveries, played, not as much in the slot as other guys that we spoke about. Could he be an early special teams contributor? Sure, absolutely. I think based on where, Sean and I have him projected, that would make sense. I really would like to see him, as like a Jamie Sherwood of the New York Jets, who just got himself a real nice contract. Robert Saleh and I can't think of his first name. Jeff Olberg converted Jamie Sherwood from safety to a linebacker. It's a new scheme this year, but it worked for him. Certainly worked under the previous. He was leader. He had CJ Mosley as a great mentor, but that's where I see it. But I do have a draftable grade on him. Like I said, day 3, put him in that, D line, and we'll be hearing his name in a good way on Sundays.
So, couple of questions. So, first of all, we want to give a shout out to the Oklahoma head coach, Brent Venables. He has a heck of a defense there at Oklahoma. And last year, Billy Bowman, I believe, was drafted by Atlanta. How does Spears-Jennings compare and contrast to Billy Bowman?
Cha.
That's a great question. Well, the one thing I'll say is I desperately think that Brent Venables is trying to fill the replacement of not only Billy Bowman, but didn't they have another safety drafted, Stutzman?
No, they had the linebacker. It wasn't Stutzman.
It was a linebacker, Stutz. Okay, so, but Billy Bowman last year, and I'm trying to get the numbers pulled up here, but you can see a difference in just Spears-Jennings usage, right? This year, like last year, he was playing 50-50 in the box or deep safety. Now he's playing probably 60-40 to 65-35 deep.
Yep.
So they're definitely trying to fill a role that I don't think RSJ is suited for. But I think they're doing that because they lost a player like Billy Bowman to the draft. So give me 1 second to compare and contrast their stats while Steve tells you.
Yeah, so I'll filibuster for you. So the reason that I pointed out Brent Venables and the reason why I brought up Billy Bowman, so last year, Oklahoma had Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman that both went in the top 150. This year, we're looking at Robert Spears-Jennings probably being in that top 150. And then next year, there's already more, right? So they have Okunlola, who's a safety converted to linebacker. He's draft eligible this year, but probably is going to be in next year's draft. Same thing with Peyton Bowen, another safety at Oklahoma, draft eligible this year, but he's probably in next year's class. So this is a head coach that knows how to recruit and use athletic players at both linebacker and safety. So just if your team needs a safety, I'm just going to suggest watch Oklahoma defense, right?
Yeah.
They're a breeding ground. They're a breeding ground, and that's SEC. You're not going to get better than that. Did I filibuster long enough, Taylor?
No. If you have the numbers, I went back and pulled up notes I had on Billy Bowman. So, I mean, for one thing, the size profiles are different, right? So we've got RSJ at 6'1". He's longer, he's smoother. There's greater range. For Billy Bowman, I have definitely a more compact, more explosive, short area burst, good long speed. I think he was more the corner safety hybrid, twitchy. I didn't really think he was built for heavy box play. Let's see. I had Billy Bowman, and I don't know the last date I had updated this. I didn't look at it, but I liked him better in slot matchup situations. Good acceleration, but he, based on frame, struggle against bigger bodies in man coverage. Whereas RSJ is the stronger tackler and he has the size. Bowman was the more willing tackler, but the smaller frame showed up. Just good at chasing from depth, good angles, great anticipation. So, Chad, what about number wise? What do you got?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing right now is Venables is trying to fill the gap left in the deep area by Billy Bowman by utilizing both Robert Spears-Jennings and Payne Bowen. Payne Bowen is another player that's probably going to get an undrafted free agent grade from me, but he's a good, solid player. But last year, Billy Bowman played almost double the amount of snaps in deep safety than any other safety on Oklahoma's team. And right now in 2025, they're kind of splitting it between Payne Bowen and RSJ. And they're honestly giving about like 211 snaps deep for Bowen, 207 for Spears-Jennings. And I'm just going to use the PFF coverage grades, but you can see it on tape too for Robert Spears-Jennings. We've talked about it multiple times with his coverage. He has a 48.9 and Payne Bowen has an 82.2. So to me, I feel like they could almost directly replace Billy Bowman with Payne Bowen, but they're almost like giving Spears-Jennings the opportunity to kind of show that he could play deep safety. And it hasn't really worked. And it's interesting because it's actually picked up more the last 2 weeks. He's playing more deep safety than he ever has. So right now it looks like Venables is just trying to do anything he can to replace an NFL caliber player on the back end of his defense. And he's kind of splitting that role.
Well, and it also could be if you're dividing it up 50-50, you're also possibly hiding tendencies. If you don't know which safety is going to be back, it may be a tougher defense for the quarterback to get a pre-snap read on.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and my understanding, so Payne Bowen, the channel has covered him. When Owen and Jake covered him like 4 weeks ago, Owen gave him a return to school grade. So he's like, he's a special teams player if he comes out now, but if he has another year of eligibility, he said more than likely that's what Payne Bowen would do. So that's why Payne Bowen was not one of the 31 safeties that the two of you are going through.
Yeah, that makes sense from what I've seen as well.
So, okay. So Bishop Fitzgerald from USC, no guarantee that he's in this draft class because he does have another year of eligibility left. But Steve, if he is in this draft class, what is your scouting report of Bishop Fitzgerald?
Yeah, so another guy, I watch USC, and there are other guys I watch, right? And I need to spend more time. I reached out to Taylor, I think it was yesterday, about it. And I'm like, I didn't expect an answer, number one, because a lot of times Taylor will leave me on read and not get back to me for days on end, which I really appreciate. Thank you very much, partner. But I just couldn't get a read. There were things that I saw, and I know I talked about this a little bit ago with Nick Anderson, but it really started with Bishop Fitzgerald. There are things that I really like about him. And then there are things that it's not that I don't like. I'm just, maybe I should give him a return to school grade. And that's where I'm leaning. But although I think he's a senior, so, maybe a graduate. But 5'11", let's see if my numbers, our numbers match up. He's got great coverage skills as a safety, hybrid alignment experience. He's got good instincts. I think he was, where was he before? Help me out, Taylor. NC State. But he started in JUCO in 2022. He was actually a quarterback and a defensive back good route anticipation. He's got obviously the background in offensive IQ, 5 interceptions. I mean, his metrics are great, again, primarily in that free safety. He's got elite coverage, versatile alignment. I don't have a lot of info on him in terms of special teams. I'll be honest. I haven't watched, in the contributions. I mean, he had a notable interception this year against Virginia Tech. The closing speed is there. His instincts for turnovers, certainly, deep field vision. His shedding of blocks is a major area for improvement as far as I'm concerned, as well as his man coverage reps. He's versatile, right? The too high, the rotating safety looks. He's probably going to get drafted, and I'm trying to think the Jets, the Mr. Relevant a year or two ago, I think out of Alabama, I can't think of his name, maybe a key. Maybe that's where he goes. I don't know. Guys like this frustrate me because I can't form an opinion, one way or another. Taylor, what about you?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. I actually think that, his tackling it leaves a little bit to be desired unless he's the last line of defense. When he's the last line of defense, oh my God, that nobody's getting by Bishop Fitzgerald if nobody else has tackled him already. But if he's like run filling at the line of scrimmage, like he doesn't. And I obviously a Broncos fan. Shout out to Alex Singleton, who just beat testicular cancer. He does this more than anyone I've ever seen play the linebacker position, and Bishop Fitzgerald does the same thing. Instead of trying to fill the hole and hit the running back, they're just going to take on whatever lead blocker that they can and kind of just hold on to him. They don't really try to go around him. They don't really try to move him out of the way. Just kind of lock on to the first player he sees and then hope someone else makes the tackle. And I don't really love that from Bishop Fitzgerald. I saw that quite a bit on tape. But again, like I said, if it's him, it's him versus if it's the player running with the ball versus the end zone, good luck against Bishop Fitzgerald one-on-one. But if it's just anywhere else on the field, he misses some of those tackles. Like I said, I have it written down out of place often in his run fits. And especially when there's balls out to the wide side of the field and he's kind of the safety on that side, he'll just kind of like screen specifically. Instead of trying to like go around the blocker to like make a tackle, he'll just engage with the wide receiver blocker and just kind of hold on there and try to wait for someone else to make the tackle. And if it says anything, Steve, he has 200 and where did I just see that? I got off of it. He has 276 career special team snaps. Half of those are on field goal blocks. So he's about 85, about 150 between 80 kick coverage and punt return. So I guess punt return. So he's like 85 attempts to have a tackle. He's one tackle in his career on special teams, but he's played 85 snaps. So I don't know. I haven't watched the film. He could just be the outside kind of contained guy. You don't really know without seeing the film. But to me, his tackling, especially in run fill, it leaves a lot to be desired. And like the interceptions, I think you talked about the metrics being super high. People that look at just PFF will see, oh my God, he has 5 interceptions. He's tied for the lead in the entire country. That's great. He's doing great at taking the ball away. He's also given up 3 touchdowns. He's also kind of he's given up some lapses in coverage. So he has those kind of back and forth. I think the interceptions, those really heavily weight up some of those things like PFF grades. And if he didn't have the interceptions, he just needs to get better at run defense. First and foremost. And I have him as around 4 to 5 grade though. My comp is Deshaun Elliott.
Okay. So this is an Anthony Russo special. So coming out of summer scouting, like it's always cool, right? To see like who's everybody watching in May, who's everybody watching in June. And Anthony Russo saw VJ Payne, and he's like, okay, this became a my guy for Anthony in May. Steve, VJ Payne, future New York Jet?
Good question. Maybe. I've got right now a late day 2, early day 3 grade on him. So provided they don't give up their whole draft to move up for a quarterback, because unless they stop winning games, which we'll know within 3 hours, right? But 6'3", 208. I love that size and frame. He's long, he's physical, he's hybrid, excellent downhill explosiveness and range. I have him down as a senior, but I'm not going to put my hand on the Bible on that. Four-star recruit, played linebacker and defensive back. He's got a good pedigree, used primarily in the box. Average amount of slot uses. I have him down at 88 snaps. Early contributor. He's a special teams leader. I don't have all the stats in front of me. So Chaw, you'll have to help me out on that. But, again, his versatility, his size, his closing speed, given that size, his tackling power, the leadership, and again, the only areas that I would see for improvement would be shedding his blocks and just how, the angles he takes. So, great job to Rousseau. I mean, Rousseau is a treasure trove, whether it's VJ Payne or Bryce Lance or Hollywood Smothers or Cole Payton. Anthony is always good for finding these things. And then suddenly that's all we talk about in our offline group chat. But there's a little elements of Minka to him, I think. I'm not saying I haven't really gotten into all the comp things with these guys. But he's a starter caliber, box safety with exceptional special teams value. Shaw.
Yeah, I'm a K-State guy, so I watch a lot of K-State, and he's actually someone that I had higher grade on in summer scouting than what he's put on tape this year. I don't think he's taken a leap like I wanted him to, I guess, in terms of I thought potentially we're talking Nick Emanwuri level rise, right, with this guy. And I think that's kind of what people were hoping for, but two areas where he has improved, his missed tackle rate is down and his coverage, the completion percentage against is down as well. The biggest issue that I've seen, and he had a very, 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 very bad game week 0 in Ireland against Iowa State. I mean, they picked I watched every play of that game from both sides of the ball. They picked on him every chance they could. Play action, putting him in situations where it's you make a decision, we're going to go by you, whatever you decide. He's way too aggressive in play action. If it's play action, he's in the backfield. He's trying to make a play, even if he's in coverage. It's how K-State got beat against Iowa State. It was the nail in the coffin. They literally ran a play that targeted that specific reaction in VJ Payne. They did it on purpose. They ran it right at him. They said, we're going to run play action on the guy that you're guarding, and you're going to act like it's a run. And they just threw it right over the top, game sealing play. So I think that is his biggest area. He's way too over aggressive on play action, but he's way too under aggressive everywhere else. He's one of those guys that I've talked about with this safety bunch that we're looking at today, and he's just kind of in the back end, listing lazily up to the line of scrimmage, hoping someone else makes the tackle. And I just 6'3", 208 pounds. I want to see you explode to the ball. I want to see you hit someone every single play. And he just doesn't want to hit. And I don't know why, because he's huge. So I just think that his size is perfect. He's a box safety primarily. 50% of his snaps in his career have been in that. About 25% deep, 25% in the slot. I just think sometimes the physicality is there when he sees it and he can go right to it, and you'll see he has some nice PBUs, nice tackles for loss, things like that. But a lot of his tape really left me wanting more. So right now I have him as a late round 3 grade. And I just want to see. I need to see more. He's so physical. He could be so physical, and he could be so good. And I just don't think that he has been showing his potential right now. And I don't know if it's the whole team's really a mess, so it could be that. But
okay, I believe we've got 2 more safeties to go. So shout out to Mel Kiper and Field Yates, because I learned of Jalen Huskey on an episode of First Draft on the sports network I can no longer watch because they're not on YouTube TV anymore. But anyway, Jalen Huskey from Maryland, converted cornerback to safety. But Shaw, what else do you have on the Maryland safety?
The one play that stuck out to me is he did not want the goal line smoke with Jonah Coleman, and I think that says more about Jonah Coleman maybe than it does about Jalen Huskey. But he played,
and that's a lighter weight Jonah Coleman, right? He dropped weight this year.
Yeah. He played 2 years at Bowling Green and was primarily a cornerback before he transferred to Maryland. Last year, I believe he was more 50-50, played some corner, then moved over to safety. And now I think we talked about it on the underclassmen cornerback podcast. They have 2 really good freshman cornerbacks. So he's full-time safety now. And he's better for it. He has a really good missed tackle rate, just 10%, playing about 55% of his snaps in the deep area of the field rather than near the line of scrimmage. 3 interceptions, 49 tackles. I think he has the second most tackles of any player that we're covering today. Third, I think I just looked down. AJ Haulcy has 50. But for Jalen Huskey, I think he's really good in coverage. He's really fast to the ball. That's one of the things that I grade on is like when you see it and you go to the ball, like full speed, like he's looking to hit someone every play. And I personally love that. Like you need to, like, if you're a safety and you're coming up to clean up and do mop up duty, like you better hit someone. Like you're probably more likely to get injured trying to like come up and not make a tackle versus going in there and hitting them pretty hard. So I like that aspects of Jalen Huskey's game quite a bit. He's just rarely out of position. Like you don't see him out of position on tape. He's just in the right spot, so much so that like he's taking things away a lot of the time. Like you'll see the quarterback's eyes look in his direction and be like, oh, nope, 22's there. I better go somewhere else. And then they'll check it down or whatever. So he's another guy that, yeah, I think he's got the skills to play deep in that deep kind of, free safety position in the NFL. I like what I see on tape. I think he has, decent upside, and I just think he's a playmaker. He's around the ball, makes plays. Really, really solid player. Really solid player. I'm glad he did the step up in competition from Bowling Green, and it looks like the move from corner to safety is really working for him as well.
Yeah. Yep. Steve, where are you in Jalen Huskey right now?
Yeah, so he's firmly in the day 2 conversation for me. I don't know if I can add any more than what Taylor did, but he's very fluid. The hybrid background helps him out. Ball production, what does he have? 11 interceptions, 12? I forget what it is in his career because I didn't make note. Great instincts. He's reliable as a tackler. He's not the world, I wouldn't necessarily use him as a blitzer, and that's fine. But what he does well. You mentioned he was in the MAC the last 2 years now at Maryland. And, when I look at Maryland, I know we're focused on the position. I think we're going to be talking a lot about Malik Washington over the next couple of years, right? There's not a lot of excitement right now with that Maryland Terps team. What they do with the head coach, it's not a high buyout, but, here's another thing. He's, in terms of Haulcy, he's getting NFL level coaching right now. In March, they went out and hired, I can't pronounce his last name. I don't know if it's Ted Monachino or Monachino. Sorry if you're watching. I will do better next time. But, he was a defensive coordinator for the Colts. He was an assistant on 5 or 6 years of Baltimore defenses that went to and won a Super Bowl. He is getting top level coaching, and I think it's showing in his adjustment. His grades are great, near 90, lining up in the slot and the box, mostly at free safety now, but he has progressively gotten better. Yes, there was a dip in 2024, but he changed schools, changed schemes. he is making a very successful change from that. And I hope he sticks at safety. And yeah, I'm excited about him. He's not Bud Clark level of Steve Manick order, right? We'll get to him next week. But, and not for nothing, this has been a great exercise because, I reassess my board as we cover these guys, the 10 guys we covered last week. And now I squeeze in the 11 guys we're covering and redo it. And, nobody's going to overtake Caleb Downs at the position. But yeah, I'm excited about him as a player. And I do think he's a bright spot for that team. And I think he'll, to your question about a year and a half from now, I think he'll be a starter before then.
Well, right. And I mean, that's also the difference between a day 2 grade and a day 3 grade. If we're giving a safety a day 2 grade, I would expect the safety to get starts their rookie year if they're getting a day 2 grade kind of thing. So, okay, last player. He's listed as a safety, but Taylor, is AJ Haulcy a linebacker or a safety?
I think he is a safety. Yeah, I think he's a safety. That's primarily what he's playing this year. Like 70% of his snaps, I believe, are close to 70% of his snaps. Yeah, in the safety position. But my comp for him will kind of tell you what I think of him, and it's Jordan Whitehead. So Jordan Whitehead is a player that is kind of had similar conversations, right? Like people talked about him potentially making the move to linebacker, right? But he's just a big presence on the field. Like I said, he's physical. He had a huge end zone interception against Texas A&M. I want to say that was against KC Concepcion. He right now, his biggest thing that I want to see him improve on is his zone coverage. Not deep zone, not in the back end. I think he's pretty solid in the back end. But when he's up near the line of scrimmage and he's in some of those kind of like zones near the sticks or short area zones, I think he gets his eyes in the backfield a little bit too much, which can lead to some big plays in some certain situations. But he's another guy that, man, it's just when he's in position, which is almost always, he's in a good spot, and the other quarterbacks just don't want any part of AJ Haulcy. They don't even want to attempt to throw near him. And that's what I kept seeing on tapes. Like he's in perfect position, quarterback shifts, throws to the check down, kind of rinse and repeat. He has a little bit of a higher missed tackle rate than a lot of these guys, but again, I think he's another one of those players that is more willing to come up and hit you. Which does lead to some more tackles because you're just wanting to be involved in more plays, and I'm not going to fault the guy for that. And again, his coverage against like 65% when targeted, but he does have 2 interceptions, 4 pass breakups. Like I said, 50 tackles on the year. So like his production is off the charts. He looks good doing it. He's he's physical presence. Like I don't think he's so slow that he needs to play linebacker. Like I actually think he's got some athleticism to him and can stick in the back end.
Steve, where are you on AJ Haulcy?
So I love you brought up this question because I started rewatching a few more games here and there last night. And in terms of this metric, as Taylor and I were going back and forth, originally AJ was up there, and then who finished number 1 for you in the end using your metric?
Jalen Huskey
just
barely beat out AJ Haulcy, and then Keon Sabb was 3rd.
Right. And I told Taylor that I had Haulcy a little above. Here's why. I was watching the tape and you see the different angles and everything. I know LSU has had some challenges this year, obviously, right? That led to Brian Kelly, now being promoted to FAM rather than coach. Sorry about that, Jim.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right.
But one thing I couldn't help but notice was his leadership. Okay. So you're talking about a defense where, Whit Weeks stands out to the eye, for the most part. Harold Perkins pops the eye. I'm looking with AJ as definitely a leader on that back end. You've got those two guys in front of you that are always chit-chattering and realigning and pointing, and the head is turning like it's on a swivel. And here you have Haulcy doing the exact same thing. So I really love the leadership, and that was the key for me in him being number one out of the group that we discussed tonight. But I mean, he's bounced around, right? This is his, and the other side of it is this is his only year, at LSU, right? He was in New Mexico, and then he spent 2 seasons in the Big 12 with Houston, right? And now he's here, and okay, now you're off to the NFL. So he's got the experience, the production is there, knock on wood, he's been durable. The ball production. He's an instinctive guy, especially when it comes to the run. Okay. I don't think he's got the greatest speed. I don't think he's the greatest athlete. I'll be curious to see what his numbers are in what we like to call the underwear Olympics. Chaw brought up the missed tackle rate, but he's improved upon that. I mean, there was 1 or 2 guys we talked about at the beginning of the show that had a higher missed tackle rate, I think, than he did, but he has gotten better at it this year. He needs to be a better tackler, okay? And I mentioned that before. Good game against Florida with the interception coming from deep coverage. Ole Miss, high volume of tackles, forced fumble. He really showed that he has good closing bursts and his physicality as a finisher in that game. And again, where I'd like to see the improvement, and like with Halsey, I have a day 2 grade on him, I've got a lot of day 2 grades right now. It's going to be who wins, but his man coverage versus the quicker receivers and just the tackling angles, he is leveraging the opportunity that this system has given him, whether it's the rotation or whatever, but he plays both. So I would rather see him at safety than linebacker, just because of what my eyes have seen this past year.
Yeah, and when I asked that question, just so everybody knows, I was not suggesting AJ Halsey be a linebacker. I just thought that was a good way to kick off the conversation. He's definitely, I think, out of the 11 safeties we covered today, I don't know that we're going to find too many safeties that are even going to push 220 pounds. Right.
That's around Keon Neal's size as well.
Yep.
And
okay.
Devin Neal.
So, question, Taylor, from this list, how many day 2 grades did you have? Did I count 3 or 4?
2.5. I'm gonna give VJ Payne a 3-4. So just Halsey and Huskey for me.
Okay.
And then
so
Sabb too. So I'll go 3. I'll go have a half to Sabb and half to Payne. So 3.
Got it. Steve, how many day 2 grades did you have in this list?
2 for sure, and Payne being very fringe, but realistically, Halsey and Huskey. I'm gonna mess up their names.
Yeah, I think those 2 for sure for me are day 2 grades, and then the rest of them are a little bit behind that.
Okay, and again to the point of what we said at the beginning of the podcast, this is the second of 3 safety shows. So we already have, we'll call it 3 day 2 grades or better on safeties. Next week, Caleb Downs from Ohio State, Dylan Thieneman from Oregon, Kamari Ramsey from USC, Jalen Kilgore from South Carolina, Genesis Smith from Arizona, Bud Clark from TCU, Bray Hubbard from Alabama, Michael Taft from Texas, Terry Moore from Duke. We recognize that he's hurt, but he's still good enough to make our list. And then Emmanuel McNeil Warren from Toledo.
Yeah.
So
next week is going to be fun.
Yeah. So we will do that group of, I think that's 10 safeties next week. The week after will be Thanksgiving, and then the week after we will do a safety big board.
Nice.
But before we close this show out, Taylor, do you want to tell everybody about your Substack and the other things that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. You guys can head over to my blog, footballwithchaw.com. Yeah, I got picks for college, picks for NFL, random things that I think about and want to write on / get time to write on. YouTube channel as well, which has pretty much just been taking clips from the, previously recorded shows and putting those on there. But yeah, just go to footballwithchaw.com. It's all there. Steve?
Yeah. So at least for now, the Twitter handle is there. I've put in a request with X to change my handle. I am trying to shoot for the moon and usurp just the word Steve. We'll see if they approve it. I don't know, but we'll see what happens. But for now, it's at Steve SWFL. That's also how you find me on YouTube with primarily, I would say now it's starting to even out between NFL and draft coverage. Taylor and I work together too. I can't wait till we start diving into our big boards. Hint, hint. We got to start planning that out. And yeah, love to talk more about the model, but yeah, if nothing else, can find me at 7 p.m. Eastern right here every week.
Yeah. So if this is your first Draft Professor podcast, thank you so much for stopping by. If you've been here before and you stop by again, we thank you. You can go to @NFL Draft Fanatic. No, I am Fanatic. And if you follow on Twitter, you get the podcast schedule and you get tweets about the players, you get tweets about mock drafts, and any of the Draft Professor podcasters that tweet something out usually gets retweeted from the Draft Professor page as well. So that's what you see on Twitter. If you go to YouTube, you'll be notified of 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern podcasts every day. So this was an awesome podcast. And Taylor and Steve are just warming up for EJ's running back board, which is going to be live in about 30 minutes. I also want to give props to Steve and Taylor because they covered 11 safeties. So when we were looking at the safety list, we were like, well, do we want to do 4 podcasts of 8 or 3 podcasts of 10? And they said, we can podcast on 10 players. It makes for a longer podcast. But we are going to finish the safety group before the month of November. So I appreciate that from both of you. So if you are watching, give Steve a follow and give Taylor a follow. We cannot make this content at Draft Professor without Steve and Taylor. So you guys are awesome. For the 110 people at Draft Professor, for Steve, Taylor, and myself, thank you so much for watching. We will see you on a podcast again in 30 minutes. Have a great night, everybody.
JETS.